All right, this is a feminism video, and pretty much I'm responding to Quintica. Now, the issue is Quintica, and it's with you, but I do think it represents a general issue that I have. And that is, I want to talk about the concepts of feminism, really. If I'm going to take the conversation seriously, the idea that we're going to go through and talk about persons and personalities, celebrities, unknown or well-known, that is not activism. As I said in a comment, I believe every person is subject to critique, and that certainly includes feminists and Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Bob Marley and Sid Barrett, and you name it. People are human beings. The concepts behind some sort of human rights activism, they're not to be discredited by the fact that the human beings that believe in them or move them forward, or even don't believe them and use them for personal gain or notoriety at particular times in history, none of that really reflects on the issues at play. So, for example, in feminism, we would ask, are there any, conceptually, can you imagine in the real world any feminist causes that are both justifiable and which, can logically be called feminist causes? And yeah, if you have a country where women can't drive, or they don't have equal property rights, or they're disadvantaged in the legal system when it comes to rape or things like this, these are obviously issues that disproportionately affect women. Therefore, feminism is as appropriate as any term to signify that, yeah, this is targeted, it's a systematic bias against women. Now, granted, you might show me that even on a world scale, women's rights have gotten better. Yes, they have. The average years of education for a man are like 8 years, and 7 for a woman. That's near equity. The more shocking thing is only 8 years of education in general, or 7.5. So, for example, there's countries women can't vote in where nobody votes. I do not find that acceptable. And we can generalize those rights, but when those rights are a systematic bias against a particular group, we call it what it is, and we work on it one at a time. We work on the perception, the framing, the characterization that culture has tried to square peg, round hole, jam some classification of people, be it ethnic or anything else. They've tried to jam it in there, ignoring people's individuality and their inherent right to exist in something akin to a meritocracy, where they can prove their skills on a rational, objective as possible metric. You know what I mean? If they have a talent, they should have a chance to express it. For example, if they just want to keep themselves and keep their life going on that level, they should be able, and so on and so forth, into an infinite number of individual options that people really, yes, ought to be given. Now, I'm not a relativist that says that, well, in that country, they don't, they're peasants, they don't like their peasants to vote. No, I doubt that would be unanimous among the peasants in that country. And even if it was, well, fine, then let them vote, and they'll vote to not have a vote that year. And when that changes, then they'll vote to go ahead and have their vote. So I want to talk about the concepts behind something like feminism. Or have you really eliminated all the feminist issues that might be important. Would you say the Twitter feminists have been having an impact? I actually don't doubt that. I know that sort of thing is true more and more, and I admit also to the impact on attitude, and I admit that they probably are having real world impact that would satisfy the other definitions and requirements that I've given to that. But what are they? You know, what are those impacts then? Tell me, maybe I can become an ally when you prove to me that some feminist has gotten, you know, rape of males legal or whatever, you know. I mean, it'd be hard to find that literally true, but, you know, figuratively, anything like that. As far as I know, the inequality in family court is going away. The main issue there is who has money. If you have money, they will make you give some of it to the other spouse, and that goes with a lack of gender bias in either way. You know, if a woman was a lawyer divorcing some man with no job, he would get half of her assets. I think that's evening out. There's things like male suicide, not really the fault of feminism, but certainly curious and certainly something that you want to look into. And there's no way to look into that without saying, well, why are men doing that? What's the pressure on men that's making them do that? There's a male workplace, which is really just like death, which is really kind of like, well, if you look into that, you'll just find that that's a labor rights issue that disproportionately has a systematic bias against men in terms of killing them. So it's an angle onto that. You know, the thing is with activism that I've noticed is like, you need an angle, and it's not a gimmick. It's just the way things work. So, for example, there's a Hawaiian sovereignty movement. Well, if somebody builds a highway, how are they supposed to bring attention to their movement? You know, they have various issues that they're interested in that impact their overall position, and they show up on those. People try to build a new observatory. They're against that. Some guy that is squatting land that he says what belongs to his ancestors, you know, they might support him. They'll move in on these particular instances because they're instances of a whole class of issue that is of interest to that kind of activist. And we need that. We need both the particular cases and we need the generalizations. And if you want to discredit feminism, there's nothing you can say about Anita Sarkeesian or Emma Watson or Rebecca Watson or whoever it is that is going to affect me. Both of them, I guess. That's going to affect my position, rather, on anything but those individuals. You want to talk about feminism, you're going to have to talk about the concepts. And because feminism is activism about systematic bias against women, it's going to have a very technical definition that I don't need to rely on what other people think it means. And similarly with patriarchy, if you want to offer me a definition as technical as the definition that I'm trying to present you with about the feudal framing, so-called strict father metaphor, the fact that many people have described this phenomena, and I'm willing to try to offer a technical definition of what I'm talking about, very specific as possible, not perfectly specific. Nothing can be. I'm a relativist and a skeptic, but very, very specific, and more specific than probably any definition of patriarchy that you're going to get from feminism. In my experience, comments on what might be a definition of patriarchy and feminism are a bit poetic and not so technical. But you seem to have studied this, and maybe you have one, and I would be genuinely interested in that. It might diverge from my point that by fighting patriarchy, really feminists are fighting this feudal cognitive framing, this romantic idealized view that the world is made of heroes and villains and special people and specially not special people and peasants and victims. I think, and a lot of controversy about if the peasants are victims, I think that whole framework, you could find definitions of patriarchy, maybe. I don't know of any, and I do look for such things that are not contradictory to that feudal cognitive framing, or that hero, the romantic schema with the heroes and the sort of melodrama idea of your villain and your hero and everything very well defined, lack of gray area. If you find a definition of patriarchy that does not distinguish itself from that, for example, that just says, well, no, we just need, we need more queens. Well, yeah, I will disagree with that. I have other kinds of activism besides feminism. Most of the feminists that I have known, that I take seriously my knowledge of them, have worked with me in political issues, helping, working on the campaign of a candidate, or for or against some action that's going on, trying to get a law passed, and these kinds of things. And they are multi-interested. They are not only interested, they are not unable or unable of seeing that there might be certain ideas that promote women, which would be unjust in some other social justice area. And they don't have trouble seeing that, and therefore not proposing those kinds of things, right? But that's on the people. It doesn't matter. The real issue is what ideas are available, right? What ideas are available in feminism? Are they supportable or not?